Welcome to the Mo Show Live, everybody. Hey, I'm Morris Lilienthal. You guys that follow me on social media know that I am a sports nut. Loved playing sports when I was younger and in better shape. But now, if you can find me at a youth league watching youth basketball or baseball, I love following and watching collegiate sports. Now, in the last few years, have the benefit of pleasure of going to some professional games and different athletics and just love it. And Junkie thought it taught me a lot of great lessons, and it's just so exciting to go and be a part of that environment. One of the things that I've always been curious about, though, is how do the agents work? How do the sports agents work? How do they operate? How do they interplay with college players as they're transitioning into a professional career? Guess what, folks? We're going to answer all those questions today. We're going to get to the bottom of this question because our guest today is Derek Simpson. He's a local attorney here in Huntsville, and he's also an NFL agent. And Derek's a good friend of mine. I'm so glad Derek's going to be a guest today. And we're going to talk to him about how do you become an agent? What are the ins and outs of being an agent? What does an agent do for their clients? And then at the end, I want to kind of talk to him a little bit about the backstory about his probably most famous client, Super Bowl champion and now current Tennessee Titan, Malcolm Butler. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Derek Simpson. Derek is a Huntsville native. He's a graduate of Grissom High School. He's also a graduate of the University of Alabama in his undergrad. He played a year at the Capstone for Coach Bill Curry. He has his law degree from the University of Alabama. Derek is a trial lawyer. He is a partner with the law firm of Warren and Simpson. Derek's firm focuses on representing injury victims in all types of accidents. And I can tell you from personal experience, folks, Derek and his firm is considered one of the best trial lawyers in the Southeast. And so Derek has also been a certified NFL agent since 2012, if I'm not mistaken, Derek. So, folks, I'm excited to have Derek on the show and excited to answer some of these questions. One of these things, what do you know? How do you know? How does this work? We're going to get to the bottom of it. Derek, how you doing, bud? Thanks for your time today.
Hey Morris, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. This is a huge honor.
Oh man, it's my pleasure, and I'm excited to do it. And I think you're going to answer some questions. It's so funny because I always see and have people that you have questions about things. It's like, how does that work? Man, how do people do this? What happens with this? And so, we're going to get to the bottom of those kind of things. I guess, Derek, before we kind of get started, let me say that, folks, if you're watching the live feed today and you got questions or comments, I'm going to do my best to monitor the feed over at on the Facebook Live version. If you're watching the replay right now and you've got questions or comments, we'll go back and watch the comments and try to answer any questions. I'll get feedback from Derek to get you some resources to answer those questions you got. But again, if you're watching now, please share it out so we can get some eyes and ears on this thing so we can kind of all get to the mystery of how do sports agents work. So Derek, I guess, it starts with becoming an agent. And, I assume that you can't just be, if I've got a buddy that's graduating from Alabama and Auburn who looks like he could be an NFL prospect, he can't just hire anybody to be his agent. Talk to us a little bit about, give us some background with regard to the NFL. How do you become an agent?
Well, that's a great question, and Mo, I was just like you. I was trying to figure out. I was very interested in figuring out the business. I played football my whole life, watched football my whole life, and was very curious of the business side of the NFL. And so what I found out is the NFL is an enormous business. They take about 9 to 10 to 11 billion dollars every year, and they dump it in a pot, and it's separated between the owners and the players. The owners they've got their own representation, and that's um, they have their NFL owners, and then you have the players, and the players are represented by the NFL Players Association, and the NFL Players Association determines who can be certified agent. So anyway, I downloaded the application, and I realized that it's more than just filling out an application. Number one, you have to pay $2,500 application fee that's non-refundable. You have to fill out a application, and they do a background check. They call it all my references. And then if you meet those requirements, they send you to DC, and you have to go to Washington for about 2 or 3 days, and then you have to test on the owners and players, and you have to pass. And the pass rate is right around 60%. And if you don't pass, they keep your money. But if you pass, then you can move forward, and you have to get special liability insurance, and you have to get a player signed under contract within 3 years, or you have to go back and start over. So I did all those, so I did all those things, and then fortunately I was able to get some players, negotiate a contract, and then I've just gone on from there. But those are the initial requirements to be an NFL agent.
So let me break that down a little bit then. So when you say have a player within 3 years, you mean a player that's on an active roster or at least the practice squad for the NFL? Is that right?
Well, practice squad doesn't count. So you have to
Okay.
have a player that is under contract, that you have negotiated a contract. Now, does it mean, and I haven't had to test it yet, but technically, if you have an undrafted free agent, they have to sign a contract. And if that player gets, my argument would be, well, I did negotiate a contract within 3 years. But fortunately, I haven't had to deal, with that issue yet. And but it's out there. I mean, there is maybe, I think I saw maybe 800 agents, but almost 40 to 50% of them don't have any players. So so really, it's a big deal to break into the business. It's extremely difficult to break into the business. But if you can break in and get one, then it's just like being a lawyer, that if you take care of them, and they know that you do good work and you're honest with them, then it will, hopefully lead to more clients.
Curious, do you have to, because a lot of what you do involves contract negotiation and evaluating contracts and kind of business corporate decisions. Do you have to be an attorney to take this test and pass the test, Eric?
That's a great question. Yes, you have to have a postgraduate degree. You have to be a college graduate. And you have to either have a postgraduate degree in law or master's in some area. Now, they do have an exception if you have a college graduate and you have done work where you have your main topic and you can show that to the NFLPA, then they'll make the decision if they'll let you be an agent without being a lawyer or having your master's in something. But
Okay.
it's all up
So
to the NFLPA. They make the decision but the main requirements are you have a college degree and a postgraduate degree in law or a master's in something.
okay. Well, that makes a little more sense that, because a lot of what you're doing, is tangential to legal work in some respects.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so having some kind of legal background, I think would certainly benefit you and your clients. I guess, Derek, it starts with the certification process, and once you get past the test and you meet the requirements and you're certified, then you've got that short 3-year window to roll the dice to see if you can find a player or players that can make it work and land. So what happens next? How, especially, how do agents typically, and I know it probably varies from agent to agent, and then I know it varies from circumstance to circumstance. Certainly, as a lawyer, how you get clients can vary from client to client. But generally speaking, how do you and other agents get clients? Is it word of mouth? Is it reaching out to people once they've graduated and having contacts in the league or having contacts with colleges? Kind of give us a little background about that.
That's a great question. The NCAA and NFLPA allows you to talk with college football players while they are still in college. You just cannot provide them a benefit. And a benefit would be, giving them a ride somewhere or buying them dinner or whatever. But of course, you can talk with them and you can try to, build relationships with them. The way it happened for me is that some players were just working out at a facility, and I knew one of the people that was running a gym, and they just knew who I was. I'd just been recently certified, so they gave my name. And then from there, it's just like, being a lawyer, you have to build relationships. They have to trust you. They have to understand what you're doing, that that the test you're taking on the collective bargaining agreement is the same test that every other agent took. And you have to have a good understanding of what's going to happen next. And that's what a lot of the players want to know. They just want to know, you're going to take care of them. You're not going to lie to them. And that what's the next, and you want to be able to say, this is what normally happens.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, from my perspective, I'm certainly as I, just outside looking in, I'm sure we all hear of the big name agents in the sports arena that represent a lot of people, but for me, growing up and way I try to run my law practice is I like being a smaller setting. I feel like we build that relationship, and I know your firm seems to have these same family values that you like to build relationships with your clients, and I'm sure that's true. I know you well enough to know that that's true with your NFL clients as well. That you build that relationship, you're there for them day in day out, no matter what their need. They're not just a file number to you and your firm.
Exactly, and it depends on what the player wants. I've talked with some players, and they want the big agencies. They want the big agencies. They want the glamour of the big agency. And I'm a boutique NFL agent. And the players that I represent, though, when they call and ask a question, they're talking to me. They are not talking to an associate or an assistant. They're actually going to be talking to me. When I talk to their family, or the family has questions, they talk with me. So yeah, I mean, so it just
That
depends
makes
on
a
what the
difference. Well, you're right, and same thing in the legal world. Is and there's a place for that, and I'm not here to downtrodden that today. But there are law firms that operate that same way, and that's fine. But that's not the services that I know you offer, and that certainly don't fit everybody's needs.
Right. Right.
I guess so. Walk us through now. It's kind of following down the trail here. So we got our license. We have a new client, and I guess a new client could be for you somebody who's already in the league that's maybe transitioning to a new agent. But what I would kind of like to think is when you've got a new client, like right now, we've just transitioned out of regular season and we've just had the combine, the drafts coming up. Walk us through if you've got a client now that recently graduated from college, looking to break into the NFL. What generally do you do as an agent for them with regard to anything from nutrition and fitness, working out? Kind of give us a day in, day out what your role is with that player as they're trying to break into the league.
Well, that's another great question. So when a player is coming out of college, of course they have a lot of unanswered questions, and so there's a lot of meetings with the player's parents and with the player himself to kind of figure out what would be a good fit.
Right.
If a player decides that I am the good fit for them, then the two most important things that will get a player on a team is his college film, the film that he has, and that's already, there's really nothing we can do about that. It's how well he played in college. But the second major thing is going to be how well he does in the combine. And if this player does not have good measurables, does not have a good combine, or does not have a good pro day, then the likelihood of him being in the pros or his draft stock going down is very high. So I put a lot of emphasis on the training to get them ready for the combine. Some of these players have never trained to run the 40. Some of them are very fast, but some of them never had the proper training on how to start, how to come out of the blocks, how to jump high, how to do the broad jump, how to do the cone drills. A lot of them don't have a lot of experience in being interviewed. And so there is an enormous amount of pressure on these players. However, so you pay normally for a place for them to stay, an apartment. You pay for their training. You pay for their nutrition and their food. And a lot of times it may entail a stipend of some spending money to get them from, the end of their college career up and through the draft. So right now, next week we have the draft coming up. And so all of these players have already been to the combine. They have already had their pro day. But right after the draft, they're going to have to report to minicamp, and they've got to be in shape. And they're going to be competing for a shot on the team. They'll bring in about 90 players, and they only carry 53 players. So they have to stay in shape. I tell them they have to continue to stay in shape, and they have to work harder than they've probably ever worked in their entire life. They're competing against some of the best athletes in the world.
Yeah, I mean, what's the average? 2.5, 3 years, even if they make it into the league, is that about what their average time frames?
Yeah, everybody says NFL stands for not for long, so you're
Right.
not going to be in the NFL for long. So the two major statistics that I try to emphasize with my players, and I tell them to write this on a sticky note and put it on their mirror. I tell them to write 78% and the number 3. 78% stands for 78% of all NFL players at one time were filing for bankruptcy 4 years out of the league. The second thing is number 3 is that if they're an average, if they go by the average, they'll be in the NFL less than 3 years. So So with those two statistics, I try to tell my players, let's try to, get you on a team, try to make as much money as you can, be healthy, try to get to the next year, save your money, and try to get them to people that are also certified by the NFL, but they're certified financial advisors. And I don't deal with the players for their money. However, I do try to push them in directions that there's people there to take care of their money.
Yeah,
Now, some of these players
think,
also have marketers that they can go out and be on commercials, and they can get contracts with Nike and Adidas, and they make more money that's separate from their contract, which I have nothing to do with. Some agencies have people on staff that do that, but I bring people in that also have boutique marketing experience and are professional in marketing that help players get marketing deals.
I think there's a big misconception, and I know this from talking to a couple, in fact, two former Mo guests, Derek. My friends, Tony Dixon, who played for Alabama, was a second-round draft pick for the Cowboys, played in the league for a year. Had a fun show with Tony and with Courtney Taylor, who went to my high school, played for the, I think it's 6th or 7th round draft pick, played for the Seahawks for about 3 years. But I think a lot of people have the misconception, even Tony as a second-round draft pick, they're not millionaires. A lot of these guys don't sit around and count their money after their 3 years in league. Now the starters, the quarterbacks, the major stars, fortunately blessed, I'm sure Malcolm to make a great contract and have that. But the average player, they're not making life-changing money that they may never have to work again, right?
And here's the problem with that is a lot of people think that if you are in the NFL, you are a millionaire and that you have life-changing money. But let me give you an example. If a player is after the 5th round, and even in the 4th or 5th round, you might get a little bonus, but you're going to be making the league minimum for your whole rookie contract. The league minimum for zero credited seasons is less than $500,000. Now that's a lot of money for a young man coming out of college to make $500,000. However, if you put a pencil to paper and start deducting, about 50% is not going to go to taxes. They have to file a tax return in every state that they play in. So let's take it down to 250. They're going to be living in a big city. They're going to need, the NFL doesn't pay for their apartment. They may, they have to pay for their food. They have to go. So you start deducting it, which they still have some money to live on. However, they don't have money to go buy a $100,000 sports car. They don't have money to go buy a family member a house. Now, everybody thinks that they do because they see them on Sunday and they're playing on Sunday and they're in the NFL. But there's a lot of players that play in the NFL that make the league minimum, and they are not multimillionaires like you would expect of a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning or somebody like that.
Yeah, I think there's a big misconception with that. I want to say hey to my friend Chris Cassidy up in Cincinnati watching. I know Chris is a big sports nut. Chris, thanks for tuning in. So, I guess, real quick, folks, if you're just joining us, you're watching the Mo Show Live. Our guest today is Derek Simpson, who is an NFL agent, and we're talking a little bit about what it takes to become a certified agent in the NFL. We've been talking about what the ins and outs of being an agent and what his role is with his players and how he helps prepare them to try to break into the league. And then, kind of what I wanted to ask you now, Derek, is how do you think, as a very successful, who's built your career really as a trial lawyer, taking depositions, trying, 20, 30 trials a year, I know you guys try, how does that experience really dovetail into being an agent? How do you think that has benefited you over the years? And certainly with the big contract negotiation I know you had on behalf of Malcolm Butler in the last couple of years, how do you think that's benefited you?
Well, the one thing I think as a trial lawyer that everybody that tries cases knows is that there is no script, is that you have to think on your feet, and that the things are going to come at you, and you're going to have to be able to figure out what your next step is. And almost like a chess game, you got to be looking 3 or 4 steps ahead. If this happens, then we have to do this. If this happens, then we're going to have to do this. It is no different than dealing with an NFL player when you're about to enter into huge negotiations. That if this team does this, then this is our backup plan. If this team does, X, then we're going to go here. And you have to have all that together to where you're not caught unprepared. And I think one of the worst things that can happen to you as a trial lawyer is to be unprepared. And it's the same thing as an agent. is that you cannot go into negotiations with any team and not be unprepared. Every contract of every player that is signed we have access to. They can break it down by quarterbacks, by running backs, by defensive backs, by defensive tackles. And so that information is there, and you can look and say, well, this is how much the top defensive backs have been paid. This is how much the top quarterbacks are being paid. But you've got to study that. You've got to know it, no different than if you're about to go to trial. So that's one of the things that I learned, that being an agent is very similar to being a trial lawyer, is you got to be prepared, and you've got to know your stuff. And you don't want to be caught, with any surprises.
Yeah. Well, and as I say, and I know you probably experienced this with Malcolm's negotiation, and you see it in the NFL and the NBA, is that you think the team may re-sign this person, you think that, or maybe they're going to give them what do you call it? They tag them for the year and things are going on behind the scenes that you may not necessarily know for sure and are not going to happen. So you've got to anticipate that. You've got to have all these contingency plans in place, and you've got to have, I'm assuming you got to have your client prepared for those things too.
Yeah. And just like, when you're at trial and a judge makes a ruling, there's not a whole lot you can do about it while you're at trial. And if a team makes a decision that is different than what you're expecting, there's not a lot you can do about it, and you're going to have to be ready for what the next step is.
Yeah. All right, Jake. So I got to ask this question. I don't think I could do this interview without asking you the elephant in the room that I know is the $64,000 question, which is, how do agents get paid? How do you get a cut, and how are you paid when you negotiate contracts? Is that laid out in the NFLPA agreement? How does that work?
All right. So every player, no matter who you are, and every player you see on Sunday has signed what's called an SRA form, which is Standard Representation Agreement, which is a standard form that agents have that is approved by the NFLPA. On that form, there are different degrees of fees. So the NFLPA has really tightens the grip on what an agent can be paid, because they control that. The maximum that you can charge a player for your agent fee is 3% of the contract. Okay, so, and I say that to make sure that you understand, 3% of the contract of what they're being paid to play football. There may be money from Nike or Adidas or a commercial or whatever. Some agents may take that. I don't. So the maximum that I would get on a player is 3%. The NFLPA says if your player is a free agent or a restricted free agent, then you're maxed at 2% fee. And if your player is a franchise tag player, then it's 1%. So, and it's called the paragraph 5 language, because in every paragraph 5 of every NFL contract, it lists how much they're going to be paid. Paragraph 5. So the agent is paid on their paragraph 5 money. A percentage, max is 3%, and the littlest is 1%.
Okay. And so is that just a negotiation, those ranges there based upon you and your client and different clients and how that works out in certain circumstances?
And, and some of these players that, depending on where they're going to go and where they think they're going to go in the draft, they, want you to negotiate. They're not interested in paying 3% if they're going to go in the first round. Some players are like, I don't want you to charge me any fee until I get to my second contract. And so, and the way that CBA is set up now is that the big contracts that you read about and see, it does not happen until their second contract. So usually the first contract is set in place based on where the player has been drafted. First round, second round, and even it's different in the top 16 compared to the bottom 16 in the first round. So, so there's a range that no matter where you're drafted, there's a range of what that player will be paid. And then it depends on how they do in their first contract. Their rookie contract will dictate what they're going to be paid on their second contract.
And typically, Derek, how long is the rookie contract?
That's a good question. All right, so if you're in the first round, it's a 4-year contract with a 5th-year option. Okay, second through I think it's second through 4-year contract, and then 6th round, 7th round, and undrafted free agents, it's a 3-year contract. And you cannot renegotiate like an undrafted free agent contract until the end of the 2nd year. So you can't, no matter if, even if you got a superstar, you can't renegotiate till the end of the 2nd year. But normally, undrafted free agent contract renegotiated until the end of the 3rd year when it's over.
Okay. Well, I guess, I want to be mindful of your time here, but I would be remiss if I didn't, I wanted to ask you a little bit about probably your most famous client, Malcolm Butler. And for those of you who follow the NFL, who would be interested in the show with talking about sports and NFL agents and sports agents, Malcolm, is currently playing defensive back for the Tennessee Titans, but certainly kind of made his name in the league in Super Bowl 49 with the interception that kind of sealed the deal for the Patriots to beat the Seahawks. So, tell us a little bit about the backstory about Malcolm Butler. For those of you who don't know, Malcolm was not a first-round draft pick from Alabama or Auburn or team. He came from little, West Alabama, University of West Alabama Division II. And as I told you before we started, that's where I grew up in that area. My wife's a graduate of University of West Alabama. And so I know that is not a haven typically for NFL players. Good football, but not a haven for NFL players. Talk to us a little bit about
Sure.
Malcolm's backstory before he makes that interception.
Well, there's not a better person that you will meet that I think that's in it than Malcolm. Malcolm is one of the greatest people. He is extremely loyal, and he is a dear friend of mine. But when I first met him, all I knew is that he played at West Alabama, that he was an incredible football player, and he had some interest. There was teams that were interested in him. He ran the 40 at the Alabama Pro Day, and he didn't run as well as I would hope he would run. And after that Pro Day, the interest really just tapered off. No emails, no calls, nothing. And there's 3 levels on draft day. You can be drafted. You could be an undrafted free agent, but the lowest of the low, the lowest that you can go to get on an NFL team is to be a tryout. You even have to sign a release before you go to their property that says you won't sue them if you get hurt. So the only thing Malcolm was offered after the draft was a tryout, and the only team that called was the Patriots. And but Josh Boyer, who to this day I consider a friend, and he just moved from the Patriots to the Dolphins, but he is a great coach and a great person. But he called me that night, and he said, "I think Malcolm is faster than his 40 time at Alabama." And I said, he said, "Well, the only thing I can offer him is an undrafted, is a tryout." And he flew up there, and within 15 minutes, he was running a 40. He ran fast enough. Josh Boyer called and said, "We're going to keep him." So he went from a tryout to an undrafted free agent. And then that first year, he made some plays and he was in there. But come playoff time, before Super Bowl, they started using him more, a little bit more. And then, he didn't even play the first half of Super Bowl 49. And then everybody knows what happened at the end of that game against the Seahawks. And in my mind, there will still be, and unless something crazy happens in the future, it is in Super Bowl history. I don't think there's any question. Making an interception with 20 seconds left to seal the game on the goal line with Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. So anyway, his career from that point, it took off, and he was in a national Visa commercial. He was at the Grammys and the Oscars and everything, and he was at the ESPYs. But he continued to work hard, and he always said, "I do not want to be defined by that play." And he worked hard, and the next year he was the Pro Bowl. The next year after that, he was All-Pro. And it's a perfect example. What I love about the NFL, even though it's an enormous business, is that there's no good old boy network. If you can play, they're going to put you on the field, and if you can't, you're going to get cut. And so there's no player that my dad knows so-and-so, or he went to this college or whatever. The NFL does not care about that. They don't care where you went to college. They don't care what's been going on. If you can play, you're going to play. If you can't, you're going to get cut. So anyway, so Malcolm, after playing for 4 years with the Patriots, he was a free agent. He loved being a Patriot. He has nothing but respect for Coach Belichick and all of the coaches there. But he loves it in Tennessee. He's having a great time in Tennessee. He loves his being in the South. He's not far from home, and they have a great football team. So he loves it. He loves being a Titan.
Wow. That's an awesome story, and what a great that story, and a testament to his hard work and his efforts. To a lot of people would have given up when they went to that pro day and didn't give the measurables that they wanted to give, and I'm sure he put in even more work and was determined to go up to that tryout and give it his best. And
Yeah.
that's what it takes.
And let me also say this. I mean, it goes without saying, I'm in a small law firm in Huntsville, Alabama, and I have a boutique NFL agency. Malcolm was really my first big player to make it in NFL, and what I want people to know about Malcolm, of what a kind of person he is every agency in the country wanted him. Every agency would have done anything to get him because he was such a great player, but he had so much loyalty to me, who was with him when nobody knew who he was. I mean, which is just a testament of not only what a great football player he is, but more importantly, is what a great person he is.
Right.
And that's what I keep trying to tell him, is that he will be remembered of what a great person, what a great football player he is. So
Yeah.
I just want people to know that about Malcolm, that he is extremely loyal, and and I just love the guy.
That's awesome, Derek. And I think, probably just not having met Malcolm or know Malcolm other than what I've heard from you and read in a few articles, is that I think he grew up in small town Mississippi, and that's probably the family values he was raised on, is that once your word is your bond, and when you make a connection with people, the people that are loyal to you, he's going to be loyal back to them. And so getting to knowing you over the years, that I'm sure you guys have built that bond, and you were gonna be with him through thick and thin. It sounds like he certainly is loyal to you and to all his friends and family that same way. So that's super awesome to hear. Because we hear stories of people who are a success on the field who may not be, a prize winner off the field, but to hear that he is,
Right.
that he's such a great guy, is just heartwarming and makes you want to root for him even more. And so we certainly, want to wish him success.
Absolutely. We will root for him because
Yeah. Well, folks, if you're watching the show today, you've been watching the Mo Show Live with our guest, Derek Simpson. Derek is an NFL agent who is also a trial lawyer here with Warren Simpson Law Firm here in Huntsville, Alabama. Today's show, we've talked about the ins and outs of becoming an NFL agent, what an agent does for their clients, how clients break into the league, how the contracts work with agents and players, and then we just had fun talking about the Malcolm Butler story and what a great player, and even more so what a great person Malcolm is. So, Derek, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's
Absolutely.
been a great interview. I've learned a lot, and I want to wish best of luck to you and your clients, and hope you guys have a successful upcoming draft and get some new players in the league and have a great, healthy season for next year. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Everybody
hey,
has
Morris,
a great
listen,
day.
I want you to know that this is I'm a big fan, and I love the show, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks so much.
Well, it's my honor. Thanks so much. And folks, thank you for tuning in, and tune in the next show. And if you want to watch any other episodes, you can go back to the Mo Show Live YouTube and catch all episodes. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Derek.